Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking episode 9 of season 2 of Arrow called Three Ghosts. First of all, quick apology for this video getting up so late. Let's just say that this has been a week where a lot of things in my life have been culminating. Thankfully, they're behind me now, so I'm going to have a lot more free time. So, yeah. Anyway, overall, I have to say this is another really strong episode. This is one where I was like, I've really got to make some time to sit down and watch this episode again. And I very, very rarely do that. This episode was that good. But anyway, let's just kind of dive right into things. And just sort of start talking about the characters and getting everything out of the way. Not a whole lot to say about what's going on with Moira this week, although I did read an interesting comment from one of the producers of the series where they mentioned that when they were talking about season 2, they realized that Moira is a character that really seems to work best when she has some sort of a dark secret. And season 2 is really highlighting that this is true. Of course, this begs the question, how long can they keep pulling dark secrets out of Moira's past? Well, folks, if you're a comic book reader, you're probably familiar with Wolverine, and they've been pulling dark secrets out of that guy's past since the 1970s, since like the Ford administration. So I don't think it's going to come down to that in terms of Arrow, but yeah, I have a feeling that they're not going to have too much trouble maintaining that with Moira. So anyway, let's just kind of get the stuff on the island out of the way. Now, first of all, I like how it is mentioned that Shadow is wearing her father's hood. It's her carrying on his legacy. And of course, Oliver eventually adapting the look is his way of honoring Yao Fei and Shadow. Of course, this also begs the question, given that we see apparently Shadow get killed this episode, why it is that Sarah said to Oliver when she first encountered him, how are Slade and Shadow? Well, apparently either the writers goofed up big time, or there's more to what happened to Shadow than what we've been led to believe. But yeah, given that Oliver apparently seems to think that she's dead, from judging by his hallucination, it's a little hard to tell exactly what's going on there. But I don't know. That seems like a really, really big mistake for the writers to have made. So, maybe Shadow has better skills in surviving being shot in the head than her father did, and Oliver merely thought that she died later on, under different circumstances. But anyway, that whole scene with him having to choose between Sarah and Shadow, honestly, I really didn't care for that scene, simply because, to me, it looked like Oliver didn't really make a choice. It looked to me like he actually tried to run in front of the gun. It didn't really look to me like he chose Sarah, but apparently that's the interpretation that most of the people online have taken of that scene. So, okay, maybe I do need to go back and watch that scene again or something. But we're just going to go with that being true and just say that it looked different from my perspective. Let's go with that. So, of course, we do see that Sarah got to see Slade in his super soldier mode. So, obviously that's going to bring up some interesting possibilities later. Oh, and we'll talk more about Slade in a bit. Anyway, getting back to the present day. First of all, I really enjoyed that scene with Oliver having to call Dig and helping out Roy after he'd been with his whole arrow in the leg thing. Uh-oh, do I sense a Skyrim joke in here? Nah. We'll let that one go. We'll let that one go. Tonight's drink, incidentally, is some delicious Rubios tea from South Africa. Very nice stuff. And also red, fitting with Roy's perhaps ultimate destiny of becoming Red Arrow, which he might be taking a step down that road, given that he ultimately, after getting patched up, was apparently Diggle's really good at that, because despite having taken an arrow to the leg, Roy is still able to go out there and break into the place with the blood drive files, which of course ultimately ends up with him getting captured and injected with the Miraculous. Now, in the comics, unless I've missed things in recent years, Roy Harper does not have superpowers. He's like Batman. He's just somebody it's all skill. So this is a rather big change. Now, of course, this makes it interesting. This kind of leads to the possibility of him, he's not going to be too happy with the Vigilante at this point. So you have to wonder if, hey, maybe he's going to look to Black Canary for mentorship, or, if word of him gets around, wouldn't it be interesting if Slade were to take an interest in Roy? That would definitely be interesting. Oliver versus Roy. I mean, what a great way for Oliver to ultimately end up having to reveal his identity to Roy. And Oliver at that point would probably certainly feel a responsibility to train Roy properly. It's like, I can't ignore this. And of course, if he does fall under the sway of Slade, well, I mean, come on. Oliver versus Roy, that's definitely some cool stuff there. And that would totally fit with Slade's plan of corrupting and harming the people around Oliver that he cares about. And Oliver did shoot Roy in the leg as a way to try and keep him alive, because Roy is missing with stuff seriously out of his league here. Let me see here. Oh yeah. Speaking of those folks, with folks injected with Miraculous, we have apparently the death of good old Cyrus Gold. But I like how they do it so that it looks like he just basically got a super dose of Miraculous, had it all splashed over his face, and he's wriggling in agony. And of course, we even get to see Dig and Oliver kind of poking around with the Solomon Grundy poem. And this is really an absolutely excellent opportunity for Cyrus to return somewhere down the road, perhaps suffering from severe brain damage due to the Miraculous overdose, and even more freaky powerful before, just going around reciting the Solomon Grundy poem over and over due to brain damage, which is actually quite in keeping with some interpretations of Solomon Grundy from the comics. So, yeah, just the fact that we really might get a very close interpretation of Solomon Grundy in live action form is, yeah, that is awesome. And since we're talking about the bad guys, let's just keep going down that road. First of all, we of course also find out this episode that Brother Blood is working for Slade and is genuinely scared to death of the guy. So, we've really seen Sebastian Blood as ruthless and confident, and you put him in the same room as Slade, and that guy is sweating bullets. I love how Slade even says to him, "Your mask can be worn by another," and suddenly why Brother Blood wears the mask makes sense. And remember, if you paid attention in season 1, Slade even says that the mask that he and his partner Billy Wintergreen wore, it's I forget the exact name, but basically it's part of psychological warfare. So yeah, Slade is a guy who has good reason to like masks. And of course we see him wearing the trademark Deathstroke eye patch, and he gets to give that great speech about, Oliver is my friend, but I'm going to destroy everything he loves. I'm going to corrupt the people he cares about, and then I'm going to drive an arrow through his eye. Man, give some serious props to Mantu Bennett. He is really doing a great job of bringing the menace with his interpretation of Deathstroke. Now, I don't think he's quite going to be able to top, just in terms of the voice, the truly stunning job that Ron Perlman did with Slade on the Teen Titans cartoon. I mean, seriously, go back and listen to some of those speeches he gives, particularly when he's dealing with Robin. I mean, it is just bone-chilling how ruthless Slade is. really one of the best interpretations of any DC villains that they've really done in years and years. And it was on Teen Titans of all shows. Although, to be completely fair, Teen Titans was really quite a good show. They really brought some drama to that series that was very unexpected but very well executed. Now, anyway, let me see here. Getting back to the whole thing with the ghosts. Well, obviously this is a bit of a riff on, the ghosts of Christmas pasts and all that. And of course, Shadow represents the past. She represents, in a way, Oliver's, survival guilt. So many people he cared about have died, and Oliver is still around. And then we have Slade, the ghost of Slade, not popping up in the middle, but actually representing the future. Telling Oliver, you said you were doing all of that to make up for your father's sins, but you were really doing it to make up for your own. And of course, Oliver and Slade are going to come into conflict this season. It is inevitable. So the ghost of Slade is, of course, actually portending the future. And of course, if you remember the story of A Christmas Carol, the ghost of Christmas future tends to go hand in hand with death. Which, of course, leaves Tommy as the ghost of Christmas present. That speech he gives to Oliver, I was wrong. You're not a murderer. You died trying to save me. You really are a hero. First of all, dude, Tommy. Oh man, I was like, yes, Tommy. This is just so awesome. And of course, it brings Oliver some desperately needed closure. And it marks another step on his journey to becoming a true hero, because at the end of this episode, thanks to the assistance of Barry Allen, he gets the proper Green Arrow domino mask. And yeah, I mean, you get more and more he's looking like he should, like the character in the comics. Now, granted, I don't want him to grow the really stupid looking goatee that Green Arrow has in the comics. But still, and he even says he prefers to be called the Arrow now. So again, we're seeing another step on that journey. And of course, this is also an episode where we see Barry Allen, more cuter interactions with Felicity, more, really nice interactions with Oliver and all that. But this is the episode where we see him starting on the first road to his journey to becoming the Flash. And the scene where he gets, struck by lightning, obviously going to be the source of his powers, was just fantastically well done. There was someone on Tumblr who hunted up the scene from the Flash Rebirth, the most recent interpretation of his origin to appear in the comics. And they put it side by side with screenshots from this episode. And it is really astonishing. They obviously used the comics basically as storyboards to recreate that scene. Now, of course, a lot of us were going into this. We were skeptical that, of course, in the story, in the original comics for years and years, the origin of Barry Allen was he gets struck by lightning, by these electrified chemicals that are struck by lightning in his police lab, and that's a very old-timey origin. And of course, they've been dropping hints for this entire season about the particle accelerator. Of course, it would be very strange if Barry was actually there at the lab. I mean, he's just basically a glorified CSI intern. So the lab, the particle accelerator going nuts and then causing some bizarro lightning bolt. That, and then that being what ultimately, that and the chemicals, it was really the best of both worlds. And much, much closer to the classic origin than I ever dreamed that they would go. And it's just one of those moments where, as a comic book fan, I'm just sitting there going, yes, I love it. And even better, the reporter, it's Linda Park, and she's actually Asian. Okay, now if you're not familiar with Linda Park, basically she's the second Flash, Wally West's girlfriend and later wife. And one of the things in the comics is that the artist would seem to apparently constantly forget that Linda Park actually was Asian. She was like, there was just so many Flash comics, and this is one thing that always drove me nuts. Where I would be reading, and she was drawn just basically to look like a white woman. I'm like, and it was like, it was so rare. It was a treat. It was like, oh, the artist remembered that Linda Park is Asian. Then again, after all those years of reading X-Men comics where the artist would constantly forget that Jubilee was Asian, and Psylocke, and Colleen Wing, and, I mean, seriously! But anyway, obviously, Linda Park is not going to serve the same role in the future. I mean, and for all we know, we'll never see that actress again. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. Maybe they'll just recast her. You know, ultimately, I don't really think it's hugely important. I mean, does anybody really particularly care about Bethany Snow, the reporter who you're constantly seeing here on Arrow, even though she is in fact a character in the comics? No, we don't. But of course, Bethany Snow is a very minor character in the comics, while Linda Park has a very, long reputation and history in the Flash comics. So it actually really wouldn't surprise me if we did see her character pop up on the Flash TV show, perhaps recast. Whatever. This was great. And I gotta say, Grant Gustin, this is my first time seeing the guy, not familiar with him, never watched Glee or anything like that. Yeah, if I would definitely watch a Flash TV show with this guy, especially considering that so many of the people who have a hand in Arrow would also have a hand in that show. And just like thinking about the Flash, because I've read Flash comics for years and years, and an interpretation of so many of those characters. Live action, like of the quality level that we've gotten on Arrow, it's just blowing my mind. Live action Rogues Gallery, live action Captain Cold, one of the best, most fleshed out villains in the entire DC universe. Oh, so good, people, so good. Anyway, guys, that's all I have for you this time. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. Till next time, take care and have a good one.